Okay, I'm really excited to be heading out to an amazing location tonight, which is about a 40-minute drive from home. So you can come along for the ride and I'll show you where I'm going to shoot the scene. I first discovered this little old boiler when travelling around the central Victorian hill country a few months ago. This district is absolutely beautiful and I've shot numerous subjects here in this region. I was so pleased when I first drove along the road next to this paddock to note that there was a big open space behind the boiler in the easterly direction. I knew the Milky Way would line up perfectly in this direction in the first part of the year. So here we are, and what an amazing piece of machinery this is. I can't wait to shoot it. I took the time to find the owners of this property before I went into the paddock. They had no problem with what I was wanting to do, but they certainly appreciated me asking permission first. The first thing I always do is line up the sky behind my subjects to make sure I'll be able to see the Milky Way core in the sky. I typically use stellarium and photo pills to do my planning for my night photography adventures. So here we are looking at the scene and lining it up with the augmented reality view in photo pills. As you can see, it lines up perfectly just behind the boiler at around midnight when the Milky Way core is rising in the eastern sky. So, as I mentioned in my initial scout of this location, which was in the daylight, I made sure this view would be available to me. I can't stress highly enough how important it is to do the groundwork during daylight hours before you come out to shoot in these remote locations. I was also planning on doing a star trail. Usually I tend to face south to get the full circle of the star rotation, but I really loved the composition I already had, so I decided to keep a more easterly perspective this time. When I first arrive at a location, I always get a feel for the surroundings in the dark. Even though I've been here in the daylight, it looks so different at night. I let my night vision kick in and take in the sounds and feel of what's around. The freeway is just over the hill and there's a constant stream of traffic passing by, but they have no idea what's sitting here just a short distance away. I always try to make sure my main subject is silhouetted against the night sky. This means getting the tripod down low to the ground to make this happen. One of my rules for shooting most subject matter is to ensure the horizon line is as low as I can get it. This helps to get in more of the night sky, but at the same time helps the old cart stand out from the surroundings. Okay, so once I've sorted out the basic composition, I'll set up the camera and get started. I'm going to do extensive light painting and make use of multiple exposure blending. My main reason for doing this is to get the light coming from different angles and to ensure a very sharp and crisp image throughout the plane of focus. The settings I use for these shots are usually pretty much the same. I'm using the Nikon D750 with the Nikon 20mm f1.8 lens. My intention is to take one background sky shot with the aperture fairly wide open, in this case at f2.2. Then I'll set the shutter speed to 15 seconds. The next step is to set the ISO to 2500. At this point I'll focus on the stars to get sharp pinpoints. I typically use the live view focusing method, which I've outlined in a previous video, and this gets excellent results. I usually take a number of background shots and check the focus often, as there's nothing worse than getting back home with a heap of blurry, out of focus images. When I'm happy with the background shot of the night sky, I turn my attention to how I'm going to light the old boiler. I know in advance that I'll be doing extensive light painting to bring out all the beautiful detail in the rusty old tank and wheels. I'll be utilising my tried and true method, which I like to call fine art light painting. And you can see some examples of my previous work here. Also, Because my style of night photography relies heavily on light painting and blending images, I'm effectively getting rid of lots of the noisy areas which usually accompany nightscapes. Remember that the noise hides in the dark shadows, so adding light helps immensely. When I'm happy with the background exposure, I change my camera settings to give me the best possible image for my foreground light painted shots. Here, I'll be still shooting for 15 seconds, but I'll close down the aperture to f5 and lower the ISO to 500. I need the 15 seconds to get around and paint the light into the shot, but because I'm not shooting the night sky, I can lower both the ISO and aperture to get a very sharp and clean image. The other thing I'll change is the focus of the lens to hone in on the cart to make it really sharp. This is called focus stacking and is key to getting really sharp foregrounds in our images. All that is needed now is the light painting. This is certainly an art form, but there are a number of rules that we need to keep in mind. Never ever paint in light from the same direction as the camera. This will give a flat and lifeless light. Always light from angles. Make sure the light is always moving, as this will decrease the likelihood of hotspots. The cart is lit from all different directions, as I'm always happy to have more shots to work with than I'll actually use. As usual, I'm using a torch here with a CTO gel attached to the front. I'm doing this because I like to set my white balance fairly cool, somewhere around 3500 Kelvin. I like the ambience this colour temperature gives, but if I was to light paint with a bare LED torch, it would produce an ugly blue tone. So my solution is to gel a torch and warm it up. There is no doubt that light painting is a skill that needs practice to get right. It's not an exact science, and as with any art form, there are plenty of methods available to get good results. Lots of people ask me if I can get a great light painted image like this in one shot. And the simple answer is no. It's simply not possible to get sharp focus across the whole plane with most medium focal length lenses, as well as having enough time and space to get around the subject to light it without getting yourself in the shot. Of course, there are many times when all that's required is a single shot, and I take heaps of those. Silhouettes and expansive night landscapes are well suited to the single shot method, and they can look awesome. My lighting method involves using tools best suited to the job. For this scene, all I need is the torch, but there are plenty of occasions where I need to utilise constant low-level lighting. If that's the case, my go-to light is an LED light panel, which can be dimmed to create a controlled lighting scenario. Low-level lighting is usually used to light larger objects, such as trees, rocks or hills, whereas the torch is great for smaller, more defined objects, such as this old cart. Many times, I'll use both methods together. I use a simple remote trigger to release the camera shutter, as this makes it easy for me to get into position to do the light painting. I used to use the camera's built-in timer, but these things are a revelation, and I definitely recommend using one. The next step is to blend all of the images into a final shot. I do all my basic edits to each shot in Lightroom, and then export them all as separate layers into Photoshop for the blending. This is done by utilising layer masks and erasing the areas I don't need in each image. When an area is erased, it allows whatever is visible on the image below it in the stack to show through. During this process, I'll remove myself actually doing the light painting out of the images as well. As you can see, this is a very effective way of achieving high quality and stunning nightscape images. Like everything with shooting at night, it takes a lot of practice to master these techniques. But I can tell you that if you shoot in the field with these editing concepts in mind, it'll make the job a whole lot easier later on. I mentioned that I was wanting to shoot star trails as well as this Milky Way image, so that's what I did. I love the composition so much that I decided to leave the camera in exactly the same spot and simply plug in my intervalometer and take the shots to create the star trails. There are many ways to shoot star trails, but my preferred method is to use medium duration exposures, incorporating a low ISO. I typically close down the aperture slightly to increase image quality. For this location, I decided on 6 5-minute exposures at f3.5 with an ISO of 500. This ensures a clean set of images that aren't overexposed, which will easily blend in seamlessly together with the foreground shots I'd already taken earlier in the night. The result is what you see here. So, this is also a great time to make a lovely hot cup of tea and relax while the intervalometer does its stuff, shooting off the required frames in the background. So that's how I took these shots. Once again, it comes down to pre-planning, scouting the location during the daylight hours, which is so important, and having an idea of what you'll be taking when you arrive. From there, it's a matter of creating the magic. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I'll be back soon with more awesome adventures under the stars. Take care.